Hello and welcome back to another Pyland level creation tutorial. In this one we're going to create a second level. So let's open up our tiled map for this new level. So it's tutorial level 2, let's open up the layout file. So what we're going to do in this level is have multiple NPCs and have it so that you can script the NPCs to do whatever you need them to do. I think I want this map to be slightly less tall, so I'll just modify this by going to map, resize map, and then I'll just change the height in terms of the number of tiles. So let's make this 15 instead. Great. So now I'm just going to change the ground and foreground layers to create the layout that I want. And for those of you who haven't noticed, the eraser tool comes in really handy for just getting rid of these trees on the foreground layer. I can just erase them like this. So just give me a second and I'll finish the layout of the map. Alright, so this is the basic layout that I want. So now I just need to go to the special layer and change all the special tiles to fit with this new layout. And I also need to do the water tiles here. Okay, so this is the layout that I want, and I'm now going to add a few NPCs and a few crocodiles. So first let's go to the object layer, and let's select the objects so that we can move them. So I'll have this player start here, and I'll have the NPC here blocking the way. So in this level I want there to be a few players in it as well. So let's just go to the objects tab, and I can just select this object and then just duplicate the object. I'll have a player in here, and it's been duplicated, so I need to make sure it has a unique name, so I'll call this player 2. And I also want 2 more NPCs, so let's just duplicate this. So I'll put an NPC here, and I'll duplicate it again, and let's put one here. And I also want to add a few crocodiles to the water. So let's have a crocodile here blocking your way, a couple more crocodiles. Okay, and let's give the paths of those objects, so they are under characters, enemies, and let's just get the full path by checking. Objects, characters, enemies, crocodiles, and let's have a green crocodile. Crocodiles, green crocodile, and I'll call this croc1. And that should be a /. So yeah, that's the name of the object, croc1. And then I'll call the other crocodiles croc2 and croc3. And I'll just put down an end goal here in the foreground layer. And of course, if I was going to make a level after this, I'd create an object of type tile trigger and place that on the same spot, and then I could load the next level. But in this case, since I'm not going to be making a level after this, I'll just be leaving it as a placeholder tile. So, the simple premise of this level is that you've got to get to the end, but you can't get past these crocodiles, because if you go along this path, they'll immediately get you because you're standing next to them. So you'll need to script the NPCs so that they will yell at the crocodiles. So let's just add some tree stumps here so that this NPC can't yell at all the crocodiles, and you need to use this player. Okay, so let's save this. And now, as long as we know the name of our objects, and you'll see here we've called them all NPC1. What I should have done is given them all unique names, so let's just correct that now. NPC_2 and NPC_3. So let's open the script for our second level. And we'll clear the old code from the last level. So we still want to focus on player 1, but let's give them both player names. So I'll call player 2 PiPlayer. It's worth noting that when you do engine.playMusic, if you're playing the same music track as was previously playing, it will just continue playing that same track. Okay, so now let's program the first NPC. Let's have it so when you talk to them, they display some options whether you want them to yell at the crocodile. And if you say yes, then they will. So let's start off. Let's set their player action. So here we can pass it a lambda function. And I've shown you the lambda notation where you type lambda and it's a keyword and you use the colon. But you can actually just pass a function that you've not actually called yet. So if you don't put the brackets on the end of the function and you just put the function name, then you can also use that as the player action. So let's do that here. So if I have a function, let's call it NPC yell at the croc ask. And because it's a player action, we have to accept player as an argument. Like we've been doing before, and we've called it player object. Here I'll just call it player. So this is what will get passed when a player interacts with it. So we can simply set the player action of NPC1 to be this function. And we just put the name of the function because we want it to be run at a later point. So when you talk to the NPC, let's have it so the NPC turns towards the player. So it accepts an object that the character that's turning is going to turn towards. So we want them to turn to the player that they're talking to. And then we want to stop the player from being able to move around because they're in dialogue when they're talking to this NPC. And we don't want them to be able to move around with the arrow keys while they're actually interacting with someone. You'll see we do this in our levels and throughout our game. So to do this, we just do player.setBusy to true. And then finally, we'll do the dialogue where they will ask the player what they want them to do. So in this case, we do engine show dialogue with options. And we'll pass these two arguments. So first, we'll pass a string, which is the standard text that will be displayed on the screen. So let's have them say, would you like me to yell at that crocodile? And then we pass a Python dictionary. So we do this with the curly brackets, and we'll pass two items, which will be the options that they can select. So first, we'll have yes, and then we give the lambda function. And again, because I want multiple things to happen, I'll just call a function here. So we can create this function down below. We'll call it yell at croc. So if you've said yes, then this is what will happen. And we want to pass the player object to it so that it can set the correct player to not being busy anymore when you've finished talking to them. So we want to call this function when they select yes. So we define the lambda function which calls this. And we need to use the lambda notation here because we actually need to pass the player object to this function that will use it. Whereas with this function, this was called from the player action, which is handled by the game engine, and that actually passes the player that's talking to the NPC. We've defined this function ourselves and we're the ones calling it, so we actually have to pass the player object here. And so if they say yes, then what do we want them to do? Well, we want them to face south and then to yell at the crocodiles. So NPC1 face south. And because we want them to yell after they've faced south, we could create a list of lambda functions that will get executed one at a time by the engine. But instead, since there's just two functions, we can just manually pass it as the callback to face south ourselves. So just set the callback argument to the function that we want to be executed afterwards. So we can just do NPC1 yell. And again, we're not using the lambda notation here because we're just avoiding the open close brackets on the end of the function. And that's the equivalent to having a lambda function there. Okay, and we also want to make it so the player can move again. So we'll set their busy to false. And then the final thing to do is to add to the dictionary the option for when they select no. So if they do no, then we simply want to make it so the player can move again. So set busy to false. Okay, and that concludes the functionality for the first NPC. I'll end this video here, and in the next one we'll continue and we'll have it so the other NPCs give you scripts that you can write for them to move them around in the level. So thanks for watching this one.